Welcome to this episode of Raising Teens podcast. And with us today, our guests are Sarah Long and Jason Royce. So lovely to have you with us today. And we've got a very moving letter from a mum to discuss today. Help, I'm so upset. My daughter's school have called me in and informed me that my 14-year-old daughter has sent a boy in her year a naked picture of herself. He then sent it round on Snapchat. Why would she do something so stupid? I think it's the kind of phone call every parent dreads, isn't it? You know, 1 minute you're making the tea and life's okay, and next your world really falls in. You must have seen plenty of this over the years, well, both of you. Jason?
Yeah, and we have seen a lot of this kind of stuff, and working as we have in schools across the UK, this is a really common issue, and I would say there isn't a school in the UK that isn't dealing with this issue every week. It's hugely common, and a bombshell for any parent to deal with, to have that phone call from the school where this situation comes to light, and then the kind of, how has this happened without my knowledge, and how has my young person got to a point where they've decided to do this? What has happened? And so all of those things are running through a parent's mind, as well as what happens next. What do I do? What does my young person do? All of these issues. And so it's not really a reassurance, but it's probably good for us to know that actually research shows 1 in 7 young people have sent a naked or semi-naked picture on to someone else, and that has then half of the time been sent on again to someone else. So this is a massive issue amongst young people, not just socially in terms of how you deal with it, but also legally as well.
And I think the legality is one of the things that young people will not think about that at all before they do it. But in the aftermath and the consequences, they're going to have to process some things around what they've done, because actually both of these young people have committed an offence in what they've done. So this young lady, in taking that photo and sending it to someone, what she probably won't realise is that that is classed as distributing an indecent image of a minor. And so to young people, they're like, but it's my body, why can't I do what I want with it? But the law says that you can't do that. And this young man, when he sent it on, has then repeated that offence by sending it on to other people. So when they took the picture, or when they first sent it on, they probably won't have really had a clue about the legal implications. But there will now be some things that the school will follow up on, quite probably with the police, to process what's happened here.
Wow. Jason, I think every parent's heart goes out to this mum, and a whole bunch of emotions must be going through her, you know, kind of anger, fear, shame. It's a horrible thing, isn't it? Dragged up the school for this kind of thing. Where did I go wrong? All that kind of stuff. What would your advice be to this mum in a perfect world, when she gets that phone call? Because you've seen it so many times. If we could get to a mum just as she got that phone call, what would your advice be?
So I would want to give her a space just to process her initial reactions, because in this situation, it's not good to kind of go steaming in and make decisions out of anger, shock, horror, whatever kind of your initial reaction is as you get that phone call. That's not the best thing for the long run. But you also, as a parent, of course, you're so distraught when you get that. So having someone, call your husband, your wife, your partner, your best friend, your brother, sister, mum, whoever it is, call someone and share with them what's happened. Someone you can trust, someone who's going to listen to you. And then I think there's a number of things I would do. So I would want to go to the school and find out what's happened, how did it come to light, what is the situation with the police? Have they been called? Have they already spoken to the young people? So what stage is that at? And are there any actions that need to happen next? So find out what the school's response is going to be and what have they done so far. And then as soon as I am in the room with the young person who's faced this, and especially if I was a parent of this child, I want them to know, first and foremost, for anything else, I love them and I'm on their side and we're going to face this together. It's going to be okay. and just kind of reassuring them, because there's a whole load of other stuff that's going to happen. There's social implications, there's perhaps legal implications depending on what the police decide to do. There are so many implications for how this girl feels about herself, how she feels about boys now, loads of stuff. What she needs to know first and foremost before anything else is that she's loved, that there's a bunch of people who are on her side and who are going to help her face this.
It's so hard though, Jason, isn't it? Because as you say it now, it seems absolutely right, but you'd almost have to be Mother Teresa, wouldn't you? I mean, I've got all these emotions, and especially if it literally has come out of the blue, this is an incredible shock to you. You almost feel, I can imagine a mum feeling, I hardly know this child. You know, why? How could this possibly happen? You can understand a head spinning, can't you?
Oh yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have a space to process that, because actually this is a nightmare for a parent. But let's not forget that actually in the midst of this, that girl has also had a moment of shock, betrayal, hurt, anger, confusion, and that's what's really important, really important, is this young lady will now be dealing with the fact that a large chunk of her year group at school has seen her naked, and she cannot take that picture back. She will not know fully whether the picture, it was on Snapchat, is it gone forever, has someone saved it? These are things that she's dealing with. And I think in the midst of it, you've got to balance out your need to express the shock, anxiety and pain that you feel. And some of that is quite well founded and will need to be worked out with your child. But also just to recognise that right now, quite probably your child's head is spinning and they are processing a dramatic change to their social life and to what they know, really.
So can I just pick up that little bit about Snapchat?
Yeah.
Just tell us a bit about how kids use that and whether they feel it's a safe vehicle or...
Yeah. So we can often demonise some technology, and Snapchat is the perfect thing for us to freak out about as parents, because it's a messaging app where you send a written message or a photo and you can time how long it stays on the screen for. So normally it's about 10 seconds. Okay. So you can send a ridiculous photo of your face that will pop up on your friend's phone for 10 seconds and then it's gone forever, supposedly. But it's not flawless. So there are ways of saving the images that pop up. So while you've timed it to only be there for 10 seconds, it can be saved. They can take a picture of it on another device. So what feels like a very safe messaging app, because you can say or do anything you like and then it's gone, isn't like that. It's not as safe as young people think it is. So it's often, it can be used by young people in these areas of sexting to send an image that they don't want someone to keep forever. They just want to flash it up on the screen so they've done it, and then it'll be gone. The trouble is that often doesn't work out because the app isn't flawless in its security. And so young people send this image thinking it'll just pop up and then it's gone. But then they discover it's been saved and actually it has much wider implications than they ever thought it could.
Jason, if you were able to sit down with this mum and try to begin to explain to her what might lie behind her child doing this, and of course there are a million answers, but what would be typical ways that you would want to talk to a mum and help her explain what's gone on and going on in her daughter's life?
I think once you've kind of dealt with with her emotions, how she's feeling about it, and perhaps blaming herself, perhaps blaming her daughter, and I would probably want to listen to what she's experiencing with that stuff. But as we seek to try and build a way forward, I think as adults, and for many of us, you know, growing up for us was very different to what it's like growing up for young people today. And I think sometimes we forget just how different it is. The young people of today have never known a world where smartphones didn't exist. They've never known a world where it's not possible to take a selfie and to send it on. And that has a huge impact on the way they're growing up. And sometimes we lose sight of that. The pressure that young people have to look good, to present a positive image of themselves to their peers and to others is massive. And young people developmentally, they're so keen to fit in, they want to belong, they want to be accepted. And in our society, one of the ways that we're accepted is if we are desirable to others, if our lifestyle is enviable, or we look a way that other people want to look, or we have something that other people don't have. And this constant pressure from young people and technology is 24/7, it's invasive, for many young people, their experience of it is that there's no escape.
Well, let's go back to the first scenario then, where for whatever reason the daughter is devastated. She's made a mistake. She realizes she's made a mistake. How can this mum, perhaps her dad, help her through?
I mean, I think there is an element of sitting in the reality of it with her. The reality is this is a rubbish situation, and it's embarrassing and it's painful. And the tough reality of the consequences is she is going to have to live with this. There's not a quick fix. There's not a way to make it disappear. She's going to have to keep entering into a social situation where someone has shared her image with her peer group. And actually, part of the painful reality there is, how do we help our kids live with consequences of things that have happened? And that would be true of a whole range of scenarios. And I think there is no quick fix to that. There is just the reality of saying, I love you, I'm with you, we're going to go and face some things. There's going to be days you're going to go into school coming up and it's going to be really tough, but you can come home, you can talk to me, and we're going to try and figure out how we work through this together. And I think it's a horrible situation for both parent and child, and I just think we have to acknowledge that.
You could understand, couldn't you, in both situations, whether the child was devastated or said, hey, listen, everyone's doing it, the mum saying, well, I'm going to take your mobile phone off you. You know, in other words, there are going to be consequences to this. That's life, there are consequences, but probably not the greatest step at the moment.
It might be. It might be that you want to have a short-term consequence of saying, actually, you've shown that you can't be trusted with this for a moment. I'm going to take this off you for a time. Yeah. But I think it's really important to always restore, because ultimately, sooner or later, they're going to have a camera with access to the internet. And the goal is to help them know how to use that wisely. So by just taking it away, that doesn't reach that goal. It's okay to have punishment and consequences, but I think we're always working towards a longer term goal of how can I help them next time they're in that situation make a better decision. And I think that's the
probably the most important thing here, Jason, although the consequence is important, is the relationship, isn't it? That's what you're going for.
Absolutely. And I think here's the hope for parents, for me, is that the best research into young people's mental health and well-being shows that having parents that they can talk to, speaking to their parents who are interested in their lives and help them to work out what's going on, is one of the most consistent and powerful protective behaviours for young people, or protective factors. It's such a key thing in a young person's development. And now often for parents of teenagers, it feels like when most of their responses to your questions are in grunt form, it's very difficult to see how important your role is. When they shout at you and tell you don't know what you're talking about, or tell you that you don't love them, or tell them that they don't love you, it's so difficult to see that. But actually, the researchers who have looked at this stuff, and for us when we're working in schools with young people, we see it over and over again. The best placed young people to face these kind of things, even when it goes wrong, are those young people who have the support of their parents and who feel like they can talk to their parents. They're in it together.
And you know, I have some genuine sympathy for this daughter. And you know, I don't often get angry, but I think I am angry at the legacy we've given this generation of young people. The digital revolution has hit them so fast, and we haven't, as adults, put adequate either training or safeguards. So they are literally the guinea pigs. And in a sense, I think we need to acknowledge that life is hard for them, trying to sort the way through this. But of course, parents will say, well, even so, why would they do it? But there are other reasons, aren't there?
Well, I mean, young people are renowned for doing stupid things. And partly that's a stereotype, but partly that's just about how their brains have developed. So the adolescent brain isn't the adult brain. It's developing, it's rewiring, it's adjusting. And one of the consequences of that is that a lot of young people's decisions are made from the kind of back part of their brain, the amygdala. It's the pleasure, pain, fight, flight, what feels good, what feels bad part of their brain, rather than the logical, what are the legal consequences of this? What will I feel about it in 10 years' time? It's the, in the moment, do I want to do this? What would feel worse? And so for both of these young people in this scenario, they've made a decision about what feels good in the moment and what would feel bad in the moment. So for the girl, what would feel good in the moment is to be valued and loved and affirmed that she is attractive by this lad. And so she snapped the picture and sent it. She's not thinking about 10 years' time if that photo resurfaces. She's not thinking about the police and the laws. She's thinking about what feels good. And that lad, you know, he did something wrong, and that we shouldn't minimise that. But we should also not demonise him, because what he did in the moment was, what feels good? Well, what feels good is the respect of my peers right now, so I'm going to send this. Now, obviously, he should make a better decision than that, and we need to help him make better decisions. But actually, he's made a pleasure-pain decision on the basis of that. So young people do foolish things, and that's why, as parents, we try to protect them. And in this case, that's why, unfortunately, this has got bigger than it should ever have done, sooner than a parent could step in. But actually the goal now is, how can we help this child start to develop the mental faculties to make wiser decisions from the front of their brain, not just what feels good and bad.
So how do we balance that kind of incredible sense of understanding young people with just basic, to this boy, this is just wrong? I mean, somewhere, not only the law, but his parents are going to have to sit down and say, you know what, you shouldn't be doing this. This is, how do we balance that understanding and sympathy that we've talked about with just, this is not the way?
And I think exactly that. I think it is perfectly okay to tell that young lad, what you did was wrong, and it has consequences, and you need to face both the consequences that the implications are going to have for you, but you need to look straight in the face of how that girl is going to have to face those consequences, and that needs to matter to you. But the difference is, we don't define his identity and his character by the decision he's made now. This doesn't mean that he is always going to exploit women. This doesn't mean that he is always going to make bad decisions in this area. It means this time he did, and he needs to get his act together and be supported to make a better decision next time. And he needs to own the fact that he's caused damage this time, and that matters.
Okay. In 10 seconds to each of you, last bit of advice to this mum. Go to you first, Jason.
I think, tell your daughter that you love her, and that you're going to face this with her, and you're on her side, and you trust her to get it right.
Okay. That's pretty good.
I don't know how to follow that. Find somewhere safe to process how you feel about this, because it makes sense, and it's okay for this to be an incredibly painful position for you to be in as well.
A deep breath, a sense of perspective. In 10 years, how you look back on this, getting them through. It's a phrase we often use about teenagers, just get them through. Well, thanks for being with us for this episode of Raising Teens. If there's a subject you'd like to talk about, do drop us a line or an email. If we pick your subject and talk about it, we'd like to send you a copy of my book, Teenagers, What Every Parent Has to Know. But Sarah, Jason, thanks again for being there with us today. And thank you too for joining us. We hope to see you next time.
You have been listening to the Raising Teens podcast. For further information about our courses, resources and events, visit us at careforthefamily.org.uk.